folks in East Palestine and Western PA here that are going through this mess and still standing up and fighting. Songs of the night, sift through the trees, deep inside your city, you will find me. War of the small, war of the flea, where the strongest bomb is a human bursting to be free, and your eyes will be my lantern, your heart will show the way to sow the seeds of courage we need to find today, to build a better future for the children that remain, where the joy will be the sunshine, their tears will be the rain. Songs of the night, shift with the breeze, all around this rural country, you will find me. War of the small, war of the flea, where the strongest bomb is a human bursting to be free, and you people are my shelter, your struggle is my bed, your life will be the pillow upon which I lay my head, and though death may come tomorrow, my dreams will come tonight, frighten off all the demons that tell us not to get together and fight. Songs of the night, drift with the leaves, all around this country, you will find me. War of the small, war of the flea, where the strongest bomb is a human bursting to be free. We were bursting to be free. I was bursting to be free. That's for all of you. Thank you. To introduce our next guest, I'd like to bring up one of your citizens who was actually the second person I met from East Palestine and has become a dear friend, and she's on top of the situation here, and you're lucky to have somebody like that speaking up for you every day and every night. So with that, I'd like to introduce Krista Graves.
Okay, I'm Krista Graves. As you all know, we were all affected differently. Some were right down on the tracks, some were out of town, some were at the 1 mile's edge, and some were out farther, and nobody really knew what to do and what to expect throughout that whole event. I had no idea if my family was supposed to evacuate or not, because initially they told us that malt liquor and frozen vegetables were burning. And then I'm seeing on Facebook that people down near the tracks were being evacuated. They say my road, but they don't show my road on the evacuation map. So my family and I didn't know what we were supposed to do until Sunday night when we were personally advised. And for that, I'll always be thankful. When I talked to all my newly formed friends throughout the crowd and see how differently we were each affected, and that led me to searching for other disasters, to Times Beach and Love Canal. And I expected there to be tons of data on each of these events from which we could draw experience from, and I found that not to be true. And on YouTube, I found a documentary on Times Beach, and I watched it over and over. And one night, I saw Marilyn Leistner's name on that documentary. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I can get a hold of her. And I typed her name into Facebook, and I found a Marilyn Leistner. I sent a message. I thought, I hope I didn't just open the worst chapter of this lady's life and really upset her. I thought I'd hear from her in the morning because it was pretty late on our time. But in about half an hour to an hour, I got a message back. And she said, hey, I'd love to talk to you, but it's really late. I need to get some sleep. But I'm going to tell you, get as far away from there as fast as you can and take as little as you can with you. And I'll catch up with you tomorrow. And I've come to believe that that's what we should be doing. I have family members and loved ones in the crowd who have relocated. Some had assistance from Norfolk for a time. Some did not. Some chose not to go that route. And then my family was not allowed because we are 1 to 2 tenths of a mile outside of the 1 mile zone. We were not allowed. We weren't given that option. So I went to where I thought I would learn the best from the people who experienced a similar disaster and a similar chemical exposure, to see what I could learn that could help my family and your families. And we've brought my newest best friend with me, and her family, and her community member here, Frank, so that she can tell you a little bit about their community and what they experienced and how it might relate to how we can apply that to our lives. So without any further, I'd like to introduce Marilyn Leistner and Frank Perler.
Thank you. Before I get into this presentation, I would like to say this. To get that call from Krista was sad for me because I visioned the people of East Palestine experiencing the same things that the people in my community experienced. I can talk a little bit about Times Beach. I graduated from from high school there in 1956, and I met my husband. He was home on leave from the Marine Corps. He was stationed at Camp Pendleton in California. At the time I met him, I was also working as a telephone operator in Kirkwood and transferring back and forth, and it was kind of a pain. So in order to make a little money, I would work in the restaurant and make chili because they liked my chili. Eventually, I became really attached to Jerry and his family. And in December of 1956, I moved in with his mom and dad. Our plans were to go to California to get married. In California at the time, a man had to be 21 in order to get married. So his mother decided she and I would make the trip. She would sign the paperwork and we would get married, which we did. I was 4 months pregnant when I came back to Times Beach, and it was a couple of weeks later before he came back to Times Beach. I was very lonesome there. I thought at first it was the most godforsaken place I'd ever seen. After I became acquainted with it and the people and my in-laws, I learned to love the community. I became very much a part of the community. I was a Sunday school teacher. I was the secretary of the church. I did so many things there to make my kids and the community happy. In 1978, my husband developed a seizure, a disorder. He was the road commissioner, and his hands and his face, he just looked horrible. And we took him to doctors to find out what was wrong, and no doctor could tell us what was wrong with him. So finally, a doctor came up with the idea to take him to Dr. Hope, a doctor in St. Louis, who looked at him and diagnosed him with something called porphyria cutanea tarda, which can be associated to the exposure of Times Beach and the dioxin. A few months later, my daughter Jerry Lynn developed a very rare seizure disorder, and the doctors diagnosed it as something psychomatic due to a traumatic experience. And of course, we got her on medicine and taken care of, and it wasn't very long after that my daughter Tammy developed a goiter. She was like this, her eyes were bugged in her head. She was very sick, her blood pressure was up, her pulse was up. I worked in a medical center for doctors, and I finally got the pediatrician to look at her, and he put her in the hospital, and she was in the hospital 5 weeks being treated for hypothyroidism. Finally, the medicine started to work, and it did help to lower her thyroid. About the same time, my daughter, LaDonna, developed a problem. Her lips would swell, even with her nose, her eyes would swell shut. She could hardly breathe. She would have rashes, hives all over her body. And she was in the hospital for 5 weeks. And we couldn't put a name on any of these things or where they came from. I was from a family of 10, and all that was experienced in my family was measles, mumps, and chickenpox. So this was very difficult for me to understand what was going on with my children. Finally, one day, November the 10th, 1982, I got a call at work telling me that a reporter had just discovered that Times Beach was on a list of sites suspected to have been sprayed with a chemical called dioxin. In 1971, myself and my neighbors paid this man $50 a barrel to spray it on our streets to control the dust. In 72 and 73, the city hired this man to spray at will at 6 cents a gallon. Soon after that, people started getting sick. And I can contribute my kids' health problems not to what he sprayed after, but what he sprayed before. The government knew 10 years before we knew that it was there. And they did nothing. They thought that in a year or so it would go away, and it didn't go away. It continually got worse, and we met with the EPA, and they told us that there was nothing they could do, that they didn't have a plan, they didn't have a lab, and it would be a year or so before they could do anything to help us. But in the meantime, I was kind of optimistic. I didn't want to believe it was there. So I called Russell Bliss, the waste oil hauler, and I asked him, did you spray chemicals on our streets containing dioxin? And he said, if I sprayed your streets in 71, there was no dioxin there. If I sprayed them in 72 and 73, they were contaminated. And he told me the name of a lab, Envirodyne Engineers, that could test our streets. So I started collecting money to run the test, because just one test for dioxin to determine if it was there was $2,400. All I could collect was $2,700. So we started sampling, and at the same time, the EPA, learning about this lab, also tested with us. You see our water tower. We were very proud of that water tower. On December the 3rd, we were told by the Corps of Engineers that the river was going to come up, and it was going to be at extensive levels, and that people needed to move to safer grounds. On December 5th, when the EPA and this lab was testing for the dioxin. My husband and I and my daughter Jerry Lynn and our dog moved out of Times Beach. We went out by boat. That was the only way we could get out. The water crest at 22.88 feet, which was a record set for Times Beach. But the mud and the debris from the floodwaters was all over the community. The EPA, knowing that this was going on, became very concerned and started to help us with cleaning up. They started cleaning up stuff outside the buildings, inside the buildings, and in testing it, they said there was no dioxin in any of the material that they moved. They moved it up to Warrenton, Missouri. In doing all of this work, the first mayor, Joe Capstick, who worked for Monsanto, was told that dioxin's not harmful. So he started rebuilding. He retired, he resigned as mayor, and started rebuilding his house. I was waiting for a call back from the lab. On December the 10th of 1982, an Envirodyne engineer called me and said, "We have a problem." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" "There's something jamming the spectrometer, and there's only one thing that would do that." And I said, "Well, what is that?" And they said, "PCBs." So we not only had dioxin and PCBs, but in all of their work, they discovered that we had 12 chemicals, not just one or two. From then on, the EPA took over. The governor signed an order and gave it to the EPA. The EPA, FEMA, the state of Missouri Health Department, everyone stepped in to help us. We were not allowed to go into town. We were not allowed to go into our houses, but some people had already started rebuilding their homes because they didn't think it was harmful. Finally, we were convinced by labs test on December 23rd of 1983, 1983, the state of Missouri, the federal government came to a meeting, it was our Christmas party, and told us how harmful it was, and that if we were in town, to get out. If we were out of town, don't go back. So people started trying to rebuild their lives. And at that time, Ronald Reagan signed an order, turned it over to the EPA, and ordered the evacuation of the town and a buyout and relocation of all of the residents. It was through this that we became ex-residents of Times Beach, Missouri. Today, Times Beach has a lab. You can go there, you can see some of the things that,
Is that the museum?
that were part of the community. But in the legislation between the state and the federal government, everything that said dioxin or Times Beach was taken off the highway and out of the town. And that word was not to be in the museum. It was not to be on the highway. It was not to be on the town. It was not to be on any paperwork. They were trying to get rid of the stigma of the dioxin. Of course, the EPA worked to relocate us, and at the same time, this legislation was going on. The federal and state government sued Syntex, and of course was reimbursed for something like $36.5 million, which was the money to buy out the town, to relocate the people, and to make it safe for us to live again. Yes.
Next slide.
The Environmental Protection Agency personnel took samples, and no explanation, they did take samples. On that December 23rd, they told us that they found levels less than 100 parts per billion in the community. We had friends in Washington, D.C. and in St. Louis and the CDC who had been trying for the 10 years that the dioxin was there to bring it to a head and let the people know that it was there. A doctor that was there and a vet anonymously gave the test results to a member of our community who turned those test results over to a newspaper. The state was telling us the levels were less than 100 parts per billion when in fact the test results showed 1,200 parts per billion. And then there was a problem over that. Actually, the EPA sued the chemical companies. Many people were given money. There were lawsuits, personal injury lawsuits, and many people were given money by 2 or 3 different lawsuits. And the chemical companies were out billions of dollars. And they brought in their, what we called the blue goose, which was an incinerator to incinerate the dioxin. And they cleaned up some 265 million tons of dioxin. They brought the dioxin from the 28 other sites in Missouri to Times Beach to clean it up. And if you tour Times Beach today, and of course if I tour with you, I can show you where the incinerator sat. Because the community flooded, it had to be up high. I can show you where they put the debris that came from the incinerator. It's still all there. And I can show you the mound. We call it the town mound, where everything that was in that community was buried. It was buried in what we call a football field, a 4-size football field. And around that football field, there are monitors, wells, that monitor what's going on underground. At first, every 6 months, they monitored what was in those wells. Then every year, then 4 years. And now every 5 years, they come in and they take samples of what's in those monitor wells and what is in that mound in the event that there's something there that's leaching into our groundwater. I will tell you this, there were many sick people, and those people were sick before we knew the dioxin was there. It was 10 years before they told us. And if it hadn't have been for a lady named Judy Pyatt, who had a horse arena, who had a horse relationship with Russell Bliss, the sprayer of the chemicals. He sprayed her arena. The birds fell from the ceiling and died. Her dog died. Her cat died. Both her kids ended up in the hospital, and she buried 62 horses. She sued. And even then, they didn't tell us. They didn't tell us until the reporter found it on a list of sites in 1982. I will tell you that there are people in Times Beach that have passed away since then. I had a family that lived on the corner from me The young couple just got married. They had an infant that was born with neuroblastoma. Within 4.5 months, that infant died. They went to 3 different specialists to see if their chances of having another such infant were possible. And they were told by 3 different doctors that there was no chance that another infant would be born with neuroblastoma. Beverly became pregnant, and very shortly a baby was born that died at 6.5 months. Her husband died almost 10 years later with neuroblastoma. I had a couple that lived next door to me that had just moved there. They'd only been there a short while. When they moved there, they had a little boy who was the healthiest little boy you'd ever want to see. After they'd been there a year, Jan became pregnant. The baby was born. The baby was born with all kinds of health problems and died at 4 months. After the buyout and after the family moved away, she became pregnant again and had another infant that was born the same way, and that infant also passed away. I can name cancers. There were 3 cases of neuroblastoma in the community. My husband had neuroblastoma. Two other men in the community had neuroblastoma. We had one man who had both breasts removed due to cancer. We had several women, one young girl, 13 years old, who died from breast cancer. We had a 23-year-old who died from breast cancer. I want the people of this community to become aware that there's a problem from this chemical. And the biggest problem we had was that the doctors didn't know anything about dioxin or how to treat it or what to do with it. It became a problem. In school, our kids that lived in Times Beach went to school, and other kids from other communities also went to school. At school, the Times Beach children were separated from the other children and were not to be anywhere near any of the other children because there was an article, a huge article in the paper that said chloracne was very contagious, and chloracne is a result of dioxin. And those parents didn't want their kids near those children. And so the school's teachers separated the children from Times Beach and the children from the other schools. Today, I have seen people from my community, young people, pass away. I wonder sometimes, is it the dioxin? Or is it something else? But yet, it's difficult to believe that these people lived with this chemical all these years and were so sick. Many of our people are lost. And the people of East Palestine need to find a way to see a doctor, to get examined and taken care of. I know the community is divided. My community was divided. We had 93% of the people that wanted to be bought out and only 7% that wanted to stay. I didn't want to stay. My husband and my children were out. We didn't need to go back. I begged him to let us stay out. For weeks, he and I argued and fussed. I threatened him with divorce. I didn't want to stay. But I came home one night and he said, Marilyn, I'll make a deal with you. He said, if you run for mayor, I'll run for marshal and we'll clean this up together. He did. He worked with me. I worked with him. We did everything we can to keep the people out of the site. And a funny story is a truck driver on Interstate 44 drove up to the side of the road, went down into town, picked up a pair of women's panties, some dirty change, a wrench and a few other things, and he was arrested by the county police. They took him to jail. But because there was nothing in that community of any value, they couldn't prosecute him, they let him go. I will tell you I can tell you so many stories, but the story that I want you to hear is the story that there were many sicknesses, so many similar, the bloody noses, the rashes, the things that I see here in East Palestine that I saw in Times Beach. And we have to pressure our government to do something to see what we can't do to stop what's going on. We took out a petition with thousands of signatures on it. And I wrote an 8-page letter to President Reagan. He was coming to St. Louis in February of 1983 for an RCGA conference. I was not allowed at the conference because I was not a business person, but I sent the messages with a friend. The petition that was signed by over 1,500 people to buy out Times Beach, plus my letter explaining the health problems. I have a document with 14,062 health issues on it. So many of the health issues that I see here. I can't do anything but say a lot of prayers for the people in East Palestine and pray that the people that are here, that are fighting, continue to fight and try to get a resolution. At the time I was working in Times Beach, John Ashcroft had appointed me trustee. We had 28 sites. I was at one of the sites with several EPA members, and one of them said to me, there will never be another buyout of Times Beach. And I said, why? He said, because we have no place to go with any of this stuff. We were sitting in a trailer park with 50 some odd mobile homes, and those mobile home roads had been sprayed with the same chemical that sprayed Times Beach. They said they didn't know what to do with them. They took those mobile homes and cleaned them up to $95,000 a piece and put them back in the trailer park and put them back in the people that lived in them. Because they didn't have any place to put those trailer parks. In Times Beach, the trailer parks are in the mound, what we call the town mound. You have this gentleman here. He has been an enormous help. I can't tell you not to listen to him because everything I've seen is more than enough to help you people. I petitioned, and you people need to get a petition and send it to the president put a nice heading on it, send it to the President of the United States. He needs to sign a document authorizing the EPA to come in and do something. You people can't live like that. And as I can see, the water, I can't see the water ever being clean in East Palestine. Are there any questions?
Pardon?
Frank, want to say anything?
Frank?
I remember a time Russell Bliss come back in to spray the roads, and they had some problems with a bunch of dead birds, some pets, and they stopped him from spraying. And he got upset at it because he had a whole truckload of oil he needed to get rid of. So we had a park area that we was starting to build, and we had it leveled out and everything. And he drove around there, it was kind of out of sight along the railroad tracks, and he went over there and he dumped that entire load of dioxin and oil mix into that park area, which on one of the slides it showed there, but it was the highest concentration in the entire beach. I just don't understand some of the things that happened and where we're at today, the things we know today, and stuff like this is still going on. You know, to be able to bust holes in the railroad cars and catch them fire and think that would get rid of the problem. When we had an incinerator burning for 10 years, where they augered the soil up to loosen it as it went through the burner and got it to the right temperature, and then it went back through again just to get rid of the dioxin, how they thought that just catching it a fire where it was. And even if they thought would get rid of it, why wasn't y'all evacuated while it was going on? I don't understand it.
The oil that was dumped in the storm drain in the park, the city got a complaint from a man who had driven on his street that had just been sprayed and it took the paint off his car. So he called City Hall, he went right to City Hall, and the road commissioner at that time was not my husband. The road commissioner stopped the spraying, but the truck driver went down to our brand new city park, opened the spigot, and ran everything that was in his truck down in our storm drain, which drains into the Merrimack River. And at one point, they tested in the Merrimack, and they did find dioxin in the sediment, and it's still there. They can't clean it up. But they put signs up and down the river that said, limit consumption of the fish from the river to once a month. Would you want to eat those fish? No.
Each year we put on town reunions to keep the community together and stuff. And I put those on each year, and it's just open for anybody that wants to come. And we have different people coming each year, but we have lost a lot of people over the years. It's been a long time.
In the early years, in 1983, we learned about it in 92. In 1983, we asked for a health study. And they told us there was no money for a health study. But they did pick 105 people from some different sites. There were 28 sites in Missouri. And I asked, since my family had health problems, to be put in that study, and they refused because I was a city official. We still don't know the results of that study of 105 people. But we were told that as the people passed away, the state of Missouri would be monitoring the death certificates to see what was going on. We've never heard, and it's over 43 years, and we've never heard a single word about anybody dying or any death certificates. We've heard absolutely nothing.
We're going to talk about the health symptoms. This is part of the compiled list.
I wanted to talk about some of the issues that we had at Times Beach, which I see similar here. One thing that was constant, and my nose was operated. I talked to Scott Smith all the time about my nose. I had my nose operated on 3 times because it kept bleeding. Rashes, acne. My daughter LaDonna at one point was diagnosed with the start of chloracne. And of course, about that time, she moved away to Lake of the Ozarks. Actually, when she moved away, the rash stopped, all the swelling and the problems, the highs went away. Headaches was something that was very, very common. Horrible headaches, stomach disorders, bladder infections, eye disorders, heart issues, fatigue, enlarged liver problems, miscarriages, stillborn babies, tumors, menstrual vaginal issues, hypertension, cysts, urinary tract infections, hysterectomies, seizures, teeth problems. A lot of people here I have read about having teeth problems. Ulcers, thyroid dysfunction was one of the biggest things at Times Beach. We learned early on that the chemical attacks the hormones. Loss of hair. We had people that lost a lot of their hair, if not all of it. So these are Times Beach issues. And these issues are so similar to the issues that you are experiencing here. Last time I was here, last September, I met a young girl, a beautiful young girl, who had lost all of her hair and was wearing a turban. It was sad. Another thing that is really not on here was marital problems. The second mayor, his wife didn't want to stay there. He wanted to stay. His house was on the second story and was not damaged by the flood. And he wanted to stay, and she did not want to stay. She was scared. They ended up divorced. He ended up in a room at one of our local hotels and tried to kill himself, but the police caught him in time. There were drinking disorders. There was child abuse. I mean, there were so many things attributable to this chemical that you see today. And I can tell you that I was very young. I was having a lot of female problems. My periods were not just 3 or 4 days a month. They were 3 weeks a month. I was having all kinds of menstrual problems. So finally, my doctor said, let's put you in the hospital. Let's do a serious exam and see what is going on. The doctor removed 5 tumors, 5 growths. He said he didn't know what they were, but he removed them anyway. And I had a case of endometriosis, which is really unusual for a woman who has had children to have. Endometriosis is a disorder of the female organs. My daughter had endometriosis, and her doctor told her that if she would have a baby in 3 to 5 months, the endometriosis would go away and not come back. She did have a child, and that child was born with problems. My grandchildren all have problems. It's ADD, ADHD, my first granddaughter was born with a kidney block. 2 of my granddaughters have seizure disorders. It was just passed down the family. My son, who had the rare seizure disorder, they sent him to the Wool Clinic and they radioiodide him. He still today takes a medicine for this problem. It doesn't go away. Don't expect it to go away. You need to get help as soon as possible, right?
Absolutely right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Now-
Marilyn. Give her a big hand.
Did anyone Can't doctors address the situation locally?
The problem we had locally with the health issues was the doctors knew nothing about these chemicals, and they didn't know how to treat the disorders. We had dioxin, PCB, toluene, benzene, ethyl ether. We had 12 chemicals that they were exposed to. And the doctors didn't know how to treat those. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my husband went to a doctor down in the country who examined him and looked at him and sent him to the doctor in St. Louis, Dr. Hope, who had been appointed the doctor for St. Louis. And Dr. Hope diagnosed his problem as Cutania tarda. I mean, they have pictures that they can show you of what he looked like before he got sick and what he looked like he got after he got the porphyria cutania tarda. He was having a bleeding, internal bleeding problem, and they opened him up and couldn't find any place internally where he was bleeding. We had to put him on pads at night to sleep, and he passed away. And when he passed away, we were ordered to do an autopsy. In that autopsy, it was discovered that the blood was coming from a spot way up in the lungs. But he was not here. We couldn't do anything about it anymore.
Marilyn, it's Lonnie. I just want to thank you for being here. You and Dr. George Thompson, Krista, Frank, your family. Thank you for being here to help our community, to help East Palestine and our surrounding communities. You know how this has affected me.
We've been friends for a little while.
We've been friends for a little while now. You know how this has affected me personally. My home is at Ground Zero in East Palestine. We were roughly 1,200 feet from where those fires, where they blew that train up unnecessarily. It was uncalled for. I don't understand. I still don't understand. Here we are over 2 years later. We're still fighting for truth and accountability and transparency from our own government and from the EPA. We know for a fact that what they tell us, based on what you experienced, it took over 10 years for your community to be told the truth. How are we supposed to trust them? How are we supposed to trust them?
We don't. We have to keep working.
You know, when I first came here, when Krista first asked me to come, I have a very good friend who worked for the CIA for 31 years, and she was helping me. We were trying to put together 16 huge boxes of my documents, and she started studying some of these things. And today, I mean, she found one of my documents where I had talked to 1,462 people who had health problems. They would come to my temporary city hall and tell me about it. What we're trying to do today, there's over 1,600 written. What we're trying to do today is to put that together and give it to these doctors so that they can look at it and determine what can we do. Is there anything we can do to resolve some of these issues? Let's hope that when Sue gets through with her work, that we'll have a document. I wanted it for today, but she was only up to 600, and I just didn't think that was enough. But when she finishes that document, I would like it to go out to the people so they can see what the people from Times Speech suffered from.
How should we go about moving forward with our lives when this has consumed every part of our lives?
You know what? saying, how can you move so forward? I have the thyroid disorder and I'm on medicine. I have peripheral neuropathy. I have diabetes and I have heart problems. I see the doctors, they take care of them. I worry a lot, but we don't have any choice but to go on and hope that somewhere, someone is going to find a solution to the problem that we are all experiencing. And one thing that I was told that makes me angry, and I've written many letters, when I was out at the trailer park where they cleaned the trailers up, one of the EPM employees told me, Marilyn, there will never be another buyout. And I said, why? He said, what are we going to do with all this stuff? That was when they cleaned up all those trailers at $95,000 a trailer. At Times Beach, it went into a big hole. I mean, it's a huge, it's 4 football fields deep.
And your community was told that if you were to leave, don't take anything that was in your homes with you.
You were told to leave and not take anything from your homes?
Well, we lost a lot, didn't we, Tammy? We were told on December 23rd, after learning on December 5th that it was there, on December 23rd at our Christmas party, we were told, leave town, don't go back, and don't take anything with you. Everything that people owned in their homes, I mean, some of my mother's jewelry, pictures, my family pictures, everything that was in those homes stayed in those homes and is in that huge mound.
Do you still feel like that was the best and safest move for your community?
I believe it was the bestest and safest move for my community. In fact, to talk about something funny, at our last reunion, we had a young man there that wanted to bring his metal detector and find out what was in that mound. There are mobile homes, our city equipment. We wanted to keep our water tower as a monument to what was happened there, but they wouldn't let us keep it. We wanted them to document on a monument the people as they were brought out. There were 2,242 people, 801 families. There was 393 mobile homes. Some of those families lived in mobile homes. But some tried to build and go back, but after hearing all of the news, that they all left. There was nothing there. All of those homes are now buried in a mountain. I watched as they bulldozed my home. I think Frank may have a picture of my home as it was bulldozed.
Group of us right now outside of the area, myself, Steve Mellon, and a couple of others, we watched what was going on and realized somebody had to come help these folks and work with them. And if you want to know what to do and what you can do to help yourself and help your community, I want to sum up with a couple of things here. Number one, if you listen to what the speakers were saying, information and getting the truth out is one of the main ways we're going to change this reality for you. Getting the truth out means 2 things. One, letting us know what you're going through so we can let the powers that be know what you're going through. Ashley's survey is critical. Amassing that information about what you're going through, because the argument is you're not going through anything. You're all just faking it. That's the argument. We know that's not true. We need to let them know we know it's not true. And number 2, we ain't going away. Information is key. We need, George did a presentation. His presentation is about 40 minutes. We have that presentation online, just like you saw him narrated here with the slides. We can send that to you, and you can show that to your neighbors, show that to your family, show that to your school, etc., etc.
keep the pressure up, and the only thing that keeps the pressure up is the truth. That's what's going to change the reality. Number two, we've established some mechanisms to try to help people because there's a lawsuit filed, but the lawsuit's going to take 3 years at least. So we got to keep people alive and as healthy as we can for the next 3 years. So what we did is myself, Robin Lesko, who is the sister you met in the back when you came in that greeted you, Steve Mellon, Mike Blonick. What we're doing is we set up a nonprofit. The nonprofit is called Ohio Valley Derailment Mutual Aid. And what we're doing is we're collecting money specifically to get to people that need help now. I don't care if it's help with medical copays, help with getting your electricity and gas going in your places where you live, help with getting a job, whatever you need. We have a survey, and it's called a needs survey. We can send that survey to you, and we're going to, because if you put your name on the list back there, we're going to send you the survey. If you got something wrong with you, or you got something you need, let us know. We've already raised over $10,000. We've passed out over $7,000 already. We're going to keep it up. We're not only going to keep it up, but we're going to raise enough money to get you relocated and get you evacuated out of this place. That's our goal. And I want to say one other thing. There's a lie being spread around this community that those of us that are doing this, myself, George, Steve Mellon, etc., that we're somehow getting big bucks behind the scenes or some nonsense like that. I read today on Facebook. I want to make this clear. We, and myself included, have not and will not take 1 penny. 1 penny. Everything's going to go to you. The nonprofit we set up doesn't have a middle person, doesn't have a bureaucrat running it. It's me. And all I'm doing is the money's coming in and the money's going right back out to people who need it. We've passed out over $6,000 already, and we're going to continue doing it. So